Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Coach Micah here, and welcome back to another video. I hope you guys had an amazing 4th of July weekend. I know I did. I love being able to celebrate the independence of our country, and of course that celebration went into the actual weekend, which is why I did not have a video last Monday. But I also wanted to wait because there were so many directions that we can go since we talked about the necessary elements for every case. And I wanted to make sure I stayed on the right track and made the best use of my time and of course yours as I continued to create these videos. So now that we've discovered what needs to be in every case, we can now start filling in the gaps. And that is what this video is going to be on, because if you are going to write a case, you have to remember that your goal is to persuade. So today we're going to be talking about persuasion. One of my favorite parts of debate is the harnessing of rhetoric, because your words matter. Your words mean things, and if you don't use them carefully, you're going to lose the round. And so we have to understand, how are we going to use our words? How are we going to use the words in our case to be persuasive? So the art of persuasion, we have to remember that rhetoric is king. And when it comes to rhetoric, we of course are talking about the art of effective or persuasive speaking or writing, especially the use of figures of speech and other compositional techniques. And of course, on the screen to the right here, we have the rhetorical triangle based off of 3 key things that I know you guys have heard of before. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today: ethos, pathos, and logos. Now, there are, of course, different pronunciations. I don't think that really matters. What matters is you need to understand these 3 concepts, because they are what create a persuasive argument. So let's get into it right now, starting with ethos. And I really liked what Aristotle, how he understood ethos. He said it deals with intelligence, character, and goodwill. But we're going to simplify those down into the 3 C's of ethos, as I like to call it. So the first is competence. Ethos is about being trustworthy. It's about someone viewing you as a credible source. And an important aspect of credibility is competence. You're not going to trust someone who doesn't know what they're doing or what they're talking about. So if you're competent, you know what you're talking about, and you fully understand the concept of your claims. What you are saying makes sense, and we can tell that you know what you're saying. Some people just stumble on points and they're like, whoa, yeah, that's a really good point. You need to know it's a really good point before you make it. Otherwise, you're not as trustworthy, you're not as credible, you're not as impactful. Another part, and that's with the intelligence quotient right there. So intelligence and competence link together. The next one is character. So when we talk about character, we mean our moral compass, our value system, our intentions, and that ties into professionalism. So you as a person, when you go into a debate round, you're following the rules, you're following the structure, you're supposed to be enacting with other people in a respectful manner. That's the next part of ethos, right, is caring. You need to respect your opponent and your judge. You want to be likable. There's a reason why a lot of times when the judges are giving their judging philosophy, or you've asked them what you should consider as they judge, they want respect. They want you to be professional. The more professional you are, the more trustworthy you are. The judge is going to vote for you because you were the more trustworthy person. And it's important to note that this ethos oftentimes is the tiebreaker in a really close round, because we are biased individuals. The judge is going to give the win to the person that they like the most when they are dealing with something that is really close. When 2 debaters are such high caliber, they just pick the person they liked better. And that has to do with ethos. Now, this information I specifically got from an article from a source called the Business Transformation and Operational Excellence Summit and Industry Awards, or BTOs as it is called. You can find that article on the internet, and this goes into depth, even more depth, of what competence, character, and caring actually mean. So in summary, ethos is the aspect of being trustworthy and credible, which leads us to the next one, which is pathos or pathos. I really like the quote from civil rights activist and poet Mary Angelou, who says that people will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And I'm sure you've heard that quote multiple times, and it's true. There's probably going to be things that you don't remember after this video is over, but you are going to remember how I made you feel as a coach and how this content made you feel. And there are several aspects to this that we'll go into a second, but look at this picture of John F. Kennedy. He evoked a lot of feelings and the passion that people had when he gave one of his most famous speeches. And he talked about, what we can be doing for our country rather than what our country can do for us. And that initiated a lot of patriotic thinking within America. And that's because he believed what he said. And that's what the first part of pathos actually is. It's dealing with passion, right? We're showing genuine emotion and enthusiasm, because if you believe what you are saying, then that is going to absolutely impact whether or not the judge believes what you're saying. If you could speak with conviction, if you can be genuine in how you are speaking, the judge is going to feel that, which is why a lot of people get high speech ranks in speaking, is because they have spoken with conviction, because they're passionate. But another part of pathos is actually provocation. So when you are speaking, you don't want to be boring. You don't want to just be a complete mess. Someone is completely bored with what you're saying. They really don't care what you have to say. Part of being passionate, part of having pathos, is being able to provoke emotion, to stir up emotion, which actually deepens the engagement that you have with your judge. That's why sometimes judges can cry or laugh, depending on the speech event that you're doing. They are stirring up emotions based off the rhetoric and based off of your pathos, your pathos. Of course, the main emotions here: fear, anger, joy, and empathy. The ability to understand events that are happening to other people and internalize that to get, putting yourself in their shoes. These are all things that really help you engage with your audience and give you an edge over your competition. But the last part of pathos, and again, there are many different parts of pathos, but for the simplicity of this video, the third and arguably most important part of pathos is, of course, persuasion, right? When we're talking about the art of persuasion, you have to be able to use your emotion to influence the audience, or in this case, the judge, in voting for you. You need to be able to take the emotions of different debate cases or debate applications, or the judge and the type of person they are, which is a subject for another video, and use that to your advantage to have persuasive rhetoric that influences the judge to vote for you. So what is ethos? It is being credible, it is being trustworthy, and pathos is showing passion and genuine emotion, enthusiasm. You're making the judges feel a certain way. The last part of the triangle, so to speak, is the idea of logos or logos, however you want to pronounce it. And it's the appeal to logic and reasoning. So making sense. You have to you can be passionate about something that sounds completely stupid. You can be a very trustworthy person, but who doesn't have any pathos, who isn't passionate at all, even though they're being logical. All of these things have to come together to create a truly well-rounded and enjoyable speech. And some people have strengths in different areas, and of course we'll get into that in other videos. And if you decide to have a coaching session with me, we can analyze what you tend to vibe towards, which side. Are you more a logical person, more emotional person? But logos is the appeal to logic and reasoning. And in this case, we're talking about evidence, right? We've already discussed how we can research the different types of evidence, facts, data, statistics, any research that gives your argument credibility. So you could argue that logos oftentimes supplies ethos. Your credibility or trustworthiness when you're making a point needs to be backed up by evidence, right? Same thing with an explanation. When it comes to your explanations, I like the 3 C's: clarification, comprehension, and connection. Let's unpack those here for a second. To clarify something means to make it really simple, to simplify something. And part of your skill as a debater is taking big picture ideas, things that the judge may not be aware of in the round, and making them easily understood to the judge, simplifying everything, clarifying, saying, hold on, what they're actually saying here is blank. And another part is comprehension. You have to understand what's going on. You need to understand the road that your opponent is taking, the road that you're taking. You can't just babble on and on and on, even if you really believe it. You have to actually make sense, because if you don't make sense, it's not going to make sense to the judge. So you need to be able to comprehend, and you need to be comprehensible. And of course, you need to be able to connect your thinking, your logic, your reasoning to the actual debate round. You have to show how it applies, in a lot of the judges' case, to the real world, or to the rest of the logic, to the rest of your case. Voting issues is a really good example of your explanation. You're simplifying the resolution down to several key arguments that the judge understands are important, and you apply them to the round. The next part, though, is evaluation. And this is where you are analyzing the strengths, the weaknesses, and the implications of different arguments. So as your opponent is speaking, you're catching the phrasing that they're using. You're understanding the direction they're trying to go. And you're using that to create rhetoric for your next speech or in cross-examination questions that allow you to take advantage of their blunder and, of course, score you the point, score you the win there. I like this picture right here, and it shows us what these are, what we can simplify them down to, right? So you have ethos, pathos, and logos, right? So ethos is ethics, establishing personal credentials, getting your audience to trust you. You have pathos, which is the idea of, now a lot of times it's the idea of pity, and it's more of a sad connotation, but in reality, you are getting them to feel something, and to feel something that is advantageous to you. You're inspiring some sort of emotional response. You're getting the audience to feel. And of course, logos, logic, the arguing based on reason and facts. You have to know what you're talking about, and you've got to connect it too. And you're also trying to get your judge to think. But this is not where the video ends, because there's one more thing that we have to talk about, and it's something that is generally grouped together with these three things, but is often left behind because it's, everything looks better with threes. That's why all of my subpoints have been in threes. And that's the idea of kairos. In this case, it means saying the right thing at the right time in the right way. Let's unpack what I mean by this. We start off by talking about awareness. Simply put, it's the idea of understanding the current moment. But we can dive into this, and that means specifically in three different moments, right? Emotionally, so you need to understand what's going on with the feelings. You need to be aware of how your words are making other people feel, what the judge is feeling. Socially, within the tournament, right? What's going on? What round are you in? What do you need to do to step up to get the win? Are you in a good spot? Are you in a bad spot? You're being aware of the situation. How much time do you have left? Do you have 30 seconds? 1 minute? Did you just start? You're actively thinking about every single second. And every second, you're analyzing the next second, because you need to deliver everything at the right time. And time is important in LD. The last affirmative gets 3 minutes to speak and to summarize an entire round. So you need to understand the big picture. You need to be aware of what's going on at all times. And same thing with politically, especially for parley or extemp, what's going on in the world. If you can be well versed in what's going on outside of the debate room, that is going to be something you can pull from to make you seem more credible, to make your logic better. Another part is adaptation. And when I talk about adaptation, I mean the ability to change your tone or your strategy to match the changing situations. So in this picture to the right here, you'll see the amphibious vehicle. If it's land, it's going to drive, and if it's the water, it's going to float. You need to be able to change whether, and there are different types of adaptation. In fact, we'll probably have an entire video based on adaptation. and the different ways you can adapt in each round. But simply put, judges are different, the demographics are different, states are different, your opponents are all different. You can't just be the same, give the exact same speech every single debate round. You need to be able to change. You need to be aware of the situation, and then you need to be able to change at any point. I really like the word alignment and agility. So you should just move from one to the next if it calls for it. And that's actually the last part of Kairos is alignment. So you'll see the railroad tracks here. It is the idea that they are both going, they're parallel to each other. If a railroad track would variate and to go off in a different direction, it would spell doom for the train. Everything has to be aligned. And your job as a debater is to align to the judge. You need to understand and follow their comments and their requests when you're asking for their judging philosophy, when you're asking what would you like to see in the debate round, if it comes down to a close decision, what do you vote on? The judge is going to tell you, and you need to 100% align to their comments. We're going to have videos in the future on how to understand what judges mean by what they say. If you want to apply those to you and your debate situation, don't hesitate to book me for a session. I'd love to discuss this with you, especially because we're going to be talking about you as a debater and how you can employ ethos, pathos, and logos depending on the type of personality that you have. Because one thing is going to click better than the other. One is going to be easier to do. The other you'll have to think about more. But anyways, we have logos, ethos, pathos, and kairos. These are all things that are going to better equip you as you write your cases to be more persuasive. You need to write persuasive cases. You need to understand what's going on. You got to understand what your judge is going to vote for, and you're going to write your cases accordingly. I take debate very seriously, and I want you to as well. I'm here to equip you, to help you get the edge over your opponent. I want you to win. And part of winning is being able to take a big step back and analyzing the debate purely from a personal standpoint. I think it's really easy for competitors to just get caught up in the briefs and the evidence, in the strategies and the different applications and the different values. You need to take a step back and understand who you are as a debater, and also understand what is persuasive language, what is impactful language. You may have a really good application, but why is it good? Does it evoke an emotional response? Is it logical? Is it factual? Is it the right thing to say at the right time? If you can think about these things, what that will allow you to do is understand these in an actual debate round. And that will change how you deliver your next speech. It'll change the direction you choose to go in your next speech, and for the better. You'll understand, wait a minute, this is probably not a good point to bring up. I should bring up this one instead. You'll understand, wait a minute, my judge is really stoic. Maybe I should cater to that type of mood, or vice versa. I really love the art of persuasion. Persuasion is one of the key elements of a debate, if not the biggest part of debate, because if you don't persuade the judge, they're not going to vote for you. So continue doing your research, understand these topics. This video is more to just get you familiar with what these terms are and what they mean, because you do not want to forget them. But I promise you, there are tons of articles, there are tons of resources out there that really dive deep into each of these and give such good advice. A lot of these slides were based off of my Google searches and based off of articles that experts had written, and I just kind of compiled them all together in one. But continue your research here and give me ideas for what the next video should be on, because I don't know if I should now just go into each of these or if I should continue going along the lines of creating a case. Like I said earlier, we know what our cases are going to be about. We know what the cases need, every case needs, and now we know how to write the case, what we need to consider as we write the case. So let me know what you'd like to see in the future, and again, if you need coaching or you want someone to help you have the edge over your opponents, and you want someone that can help unlock the skills that you know you have, then contact me at coachmicahdiaz@gmail.com. I'd love to be able to meet with you virtually or in person and help you out the best that I can, especially because it's now almost the middle of July. We just have a few short months before the tournament season starts. And I honestly can't wait to start creating content for the other resolutions because they are awesome. But anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something, and I will see you in the next one.